During the 16 Days of Action 2022 campaign,
Gosa Girls on Fire and Tech Shack Tactical TV interview ordinary but outstanding women.
Hashtag I am every woman.
In our interviews, we honor outstanding businesswomen who have made a difference in their specific sphere of society to ladies who have overcome horrific gender-based violence incidences.
We believe in action, not activism.
Why are women continually cast as helpless victims?
Bystanders to their own fate, presuming that victimhood is a fait accompli. We are not simply deer in the headlights of gender-based violence.
We can and will stand up for ourselves.
We are not second-class citizens who need special days and men standing up for us.
We say no more.
Activism does not change the minds of predators.
Predators will always be predators, waiting in the dark to claim their victims. Standing on street corners with placards saying that we are against gender-based violence has and never alone make a difference. Take action now, not to be a victim, and be a strong woman. Do not put your trust in anybody else except yourself. Take the example from the strong women in these interviews and be a warrior. Hashtag victim no longer.
Lynette Oxley here for Tech Shack Tactical TV and Gosa Girls on Fire, 16 Days of Action for No Violence Against Women and Children. I'm sitting with Leigh Joy Pleydell, Mansel-Pleydell. That's quite a mouthful. But you're called Leigh, am I correct? Correct. Leigh, tell me, who are you, and tell me a little bit about your story.
Sure, I love that question. Who am I? I'm a passionate single mom to a beautiful 10-year-old and an amazing 21-year-old, and I'm a glammy to my little grandchild who's 2. And I say glammy because I'm just too young to be. Am I allowed to swear?
No, otherwise YouTube will take it out. They actually put it on. I have to be very careful about swearing myself because, yeah. So you're glammy for granny.
Instead of granny, I call myself glammy. And I am a coach, and I work in the space of I help people with trauma, sexual trauma, drug abuse. But the thing that I'm probably most well known for is my self-care program and the help that I help people around self-mastery, and because I reckon self-mastery is the next frontier of leadership. So if we can be our very best selves, then we can show up as great leaders. So your tagline is not 16 days of activism, but 16 days of action. And that's probably the pinnacle of what I teach my clients, that we need to take action in order to change.
So what brought you to this space? Was the addiction problem, sexual abuse, GBV? What brought you to this point that you actually wanted to be a life coach?
So I reckoned there was a lot of different experiences I'd had as a human being, and if my mother-in-law from my first marriage, she said to me that what I've gone through is a gift because I'm able to help other people. And so I went and studied psychology, and I had this deep yearning to be able to be the wounded healer. So take my woundedness, heal myself and with other people, and then being able to offer that grace to other people. So I've had a myriad of different experiences. My mom died they got divorced when I was 3. My father used to abuse my mother. I remember the one episode, I must have been about 3, and I'd gone to ask her. There was a wooden cabinet in the dining room, and on top of the wooden cabinet was this huge pack of Cokie pens, and I remember asking her for it, and as she gave it down to me, the dining room door opened and my father walked in, and he hit her and she went flying across the dining room and crumpled in the corner. So that's one of the memories that I have as a child. And
what happened to your mom?
So they got divorced, and then when what happened to her from the beatings?
Is she still alive?
So she died when I was 4.5. She was killed by an elephant.
That is traumatic. You were not witness to it, am I?
No, thank God, no. And her boyfriend at the time, I'd felt, well, it'll be okay. I've at least got Tim. And then we were with him for some time, and he said to us, we're going on a holiday to Cape Town. We lived here somewhere in Fourways with him. And I remember driving to Cape Town and being all excited about this trip with my younger brother. So I was 4.5, my younger brother was about 3. And we got to their house in Philippi, in the Cape, and he gave me the big hug, and I went to sleep. I was exhausted from the long trip, and I woke up to this lady walking down the corridor with a little white t-shirt with a cross on it. And I was like, I mean, I'd obviously met her the day before, but I wasn't sure of who she was. And I said, "Where's Tim?" And she said, "He's gone." And a piece of me broke that day. I think the abandonment of and then my father gave me up for adoption. So it was too much. I lost my brother, went with my father to England. My oldest brother, I'd lost my mom, and I'd lost my father, and I'd lost my would-be stepfather. And I was a very cute, magical child.
And I can actually see this little child, and you've lost everything, and you went up for adoption. It's sad. What was going on in your mind? You say you broke.
Yeah, there was a part of me that broke. I think my trust in the world broke. My idea that my sense of safety, my sense of belonging, and my sense of safety broke that day. And I almost feel like the addict that I'm now in recovery, but my addiction was born that day. That final, all that trauma sparked the addict within me. And the people that adopted me, God bless them, they're my aunt and uncle, so my mom's, my maternal aunt and her husband. And it wasn't easy. There was physical and emotional abuse. They did the best they could with the tools that they had. I'm not really in contact with them anymore. I wish them well, and I'm grateful for what they've given me. But I think it wasn't easy for them. It wasn't easy for them to take on 2 children. And I'm not, I felt unwanted, unloved, and unseen. And that came from not just from them, but from being given up for adoption and Tim just leaving me in the middle of the night. So, yeah, I found different ways to try and cope with that feeling of feeling unwanted, unloved, and unseen. And the first time I ever drank peach schnapps, I'll never forget it, peach schnapps and lemonade. I went to a club and I was 17. It was quite old for somebody that's an addict to start drinking. I paid up for it though. And, there were memories that I wanted to drown. And one of them was where I was molested by my grandfather. So the man who adopted me's father.
How old were you?
The first time I was 9 and the second time I was 12.
Because that always stays with you. And when did that... So that came out when you started drinking. So that trauma was there. It's probably not something that you realized was causing the drinking. But that's... Some people only realize or think about it when they're 30 or 40 years old. That abuse.
I think, it was obviously a violation of trust because I trusted him. It was a violation of my body, and what he had done to me left me abandoning and rejecting my own body because he made comment that my breasts weren't big enough or I wasn't developed enough. And so
you were 9 years old.
Yeah.
This makes me really, really angry.
Yeah. So why I bring that up is because trauma and gender-based violence, it's not only from perpetrator to victim. The victim victimizes. I victimized myself as well, in that I abandoned my look. I abandoned I rejected my breasts. I rejected what I looked like. And then I told my aunt / mother, and she told me that I was lying. So I'd been betrayed and abandoned by her as well. So it was devastating. I'm very lucky. I worked with clients that have had way worse physical, sexual trauma, aggressive, violent trauma than mine.
But your story is
but
your
it's still my story, and it's still had a very deep impact on me as a human being. And and I want to tell the story because these things happen. It doesn't have to be, we think like the big violent, aggressive attacks is what it's all about, but it's actually the smaller, less inconspicuous traumas are as damaging. And so, so when I was 17, I started drinking, and I started drinking alcoholically almost from the beginning. You know, I'd binge drink, I'd party on the weekends, go to school in the week. Then I went to study after school. There I just drank every single day.
Yeah, no, I was at varsity, and it's very conducive to drinking in general. It just happens at varsity. Where did you go to varsity?
So I studied in Durbanville at a computer studies. So we did tourism, marketing, public relations. I always say that the first things that I studied were the things that I knew I didn't want to do. But it gave me great insight into marketing. I still suck at geography. I still don't know where things are in the world. My second husband always laughs at me. And then unfortunately my drinking got to a place where I put myself in very, very dangerous situations. And when I was 21, I was date raped by a guy that I'd gone out with, and there's something about sexual trauma that went to the core of who I was. You know, as a young woman, I hadn't had children yet. I'd started to realize that there's this thing that I've got that's powerful, you know, that guys want. I was quite thin and twiggy at school, so boys weren't really that interested in me. But when I turned 19, 20, I filled out a bit, and boys were suddenly like, oh, okay, hello, who are you? No. And suddenly I had this power that I didn't have before. And then to have, and I not that I am saying it's okay what he did, but I don't think I would have put myself in that situation had I not been drinking. So I'm not, I think that our girls need to be extra careful of where and what they're doing, especially when we're drinking, because we put ourselves into really dodgy situations. But I told my ex-boyfriend about it, who completely flipped out, grabbed his gun, dragged me to this guy's house, pointed the gun through the window at him, and with my screaming and crying, and I managed to stop him, not shoot anybody. And then he said, you're going to the police station. I went to the police station, as in I'm sure all these stories that you're going to hear, the police were absolutely useless. And the guy that was interviewing me was so abusive. He was just terrible. I can't even.
Basically, the system rapes you again. That's basically what's happened.
Exactly.
Know, you don't. There's been some good stories, but the majority is not good.
Luckily, I knew to demand a female police officer, and she was much better. She took my statement, and then they phoned me. The cops phoned me a couple of days later and said, "Listen, you can carry on with this charge, but if you do, then this guy that had raped me was, obviously I can't say his name because there was no court case. He was going to lay a charge of manslaughter, attempted manslaughter, attempted murder.
Yeah, because your boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, pointed the gun at him.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, I didn't obviously want him to go to jail. I understood his intention was to protect me. It wasn't the best way to deal with it. But in some ways, I was so grateful that somebody actually stood up for me in some way. I don't know if I would have gone ahead with the court case anyway. It's so traumatic, and I didn't have the support of my family. It was basically said, well, kind of, you've been drinking, you kind of deserve it, kind of thing, if you're going to behave badly. Those weren't the words that were uttered, but that's how it felt. That's how it felt for me. yeah, and then after that, I became suicidal. I attempted suicide, landed up in hospital, and and then my drinking just really escalated from that, because I didn't have support at home, and I didn't have psychiatric care and therapy and that kind of thing. But Lynette, I'm 48 years old, and I am 15 years sober and clean, and I've been helping other people in this space for the last 15 years. And it's for me, I've met the most incredible, powerful, brave, fierce men and women, because I think it's important that we speak about men victims as well, men that have been traumatized by rape and so. And it's a deep honor for me to have this human experience, because I believe that I've lived many lives. I believe I've lived many lives of being, and what are the chances that maybe I've hurt other people this way? And so I've needed to learn what it feels like to be on the other side of it. So in order for me to have deep compassion for myself, I've kind of had to walk in tandem with having compassion for myself, and therefore learn compassion for the other people. And I just during lockdown, I hadn't been speaking to my adopted mom, and I had this moment where I realized that the choice that she made all these years and how she showed up as my mother was exactly what I needed to become the person I am today. And it wasn't an easy choice for her to make. It couldn't have been easy to be the person that she chose to be. So I'm very grateful to her for that. I'm very grateful for her choosing that hard road, and I wish her well. And I have the same piece, I've done such different types of trauma therapy for myself over the years. I've done physical therapy like TRE, which is trauma release therapy, which is you shake the trauma out of your body. I've done dancing, I've done talk therapy, all sorts of different talk therapy.
That's why I was smiling, because it was just now, because it was grabbing my feet.
I want to come play.
So now we don't have a Uji here, because I've got a Uji at the office.
And that's probably what he's smelling.
And Uji is always part of whatever we record. And he's not so small; it's a big Rottweiler. Okay. So what other therapy?
So then I've done brain recursive wiring therapy is amazing. I highly recommend people do it. Have a look into it. It's very brilliant in the way that it freezes the memory. It gave me the opportunity to look at the trauma, look at what I experienced in detail, and say how I would have preferred to react. Because I froze. That's my trauma responses. You get the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn, right? So I freeze when I'm in a traumatic environment. And through this brain recursive BWRT, I was able to say no. And at first I wanted to punch him, and then she was like, well, do you really want to? I was like, no, I don't want to punch him. It's not part of my nature. Yeah. But I could say no, and that's not appropriate, and I could stop him from doing what he was doing. And then I could walk away feeling good about me standing up for myself, because often we feel bad, right? We feel bad about standing up and saying no as people pleasers and taking the action, right?
Women try to please, in a lot of relationships, try to please the man, to look good, to make the food, and just say yes to anything that, unfortunately, in our culture in South Africa, we also try to please other people.
It's also a way to, that fawn please is a way to stop the trauma. But anyway, so this is how I and through this brain recursive therapy that Dr. Elissa Mako took me through. Unfortunately, she passed recently. But I highly recommend people do brain recursive. I've done CBT, I've done DBT, I've done a lot of talk therapy. And I've developed a program, a self-care tripod model based on authentic connection to self, authentic connection to other, and authentic connection to the sacred. And then how, through self-mastery, we use those three aspects of being. So that's just high level. and then helping other people helps me, you know.
Absolutely.
Like after this, I've got a session with a client, and I get to share my experience, strength, and hope with them, you know. And so I don't live in the victim anymore. I don't even see myself as a victim anymore.
And one of our hashtags for Girls on Fire is hashtag victim no longer. And I think what got me last Friday is it's nice to speak to positive people like you, but I spoke to one lady, and I don't know if she's ever going to get over the trauma that she endured. And that actually got to me more than speaking to you, which is actually a positive experience. You know, it's at least you're taking action, you're not a victim, and you've decided not to be a victim.
It takes a lot of work, Lynette. It's very brave. I mean, and maybe she will come with time. Maybe she will find a way. But I people can't be forced out of spaces. I mean, I know for years people would say, like, I wish you would just get over it. Would you just stop talking about it? I mean, God, it happened so many years ago. And my soul needed the time that it needed, and my heart and my mind needed the time it needed to be able to walk the journey it did, you know. And it started affecting my marriages, the trauma, obviously the sexual trauma, the way that I showed up in my marriages affected that. And so the last 10 years or so, I've been on a really beautiful journey around sacred sexuality, and what does that look like? And it's and owning my sexuality in a way that is wholesome. Because when I first came into my power as a sexual being, I could see I could manipulate people with it. I could manipulate men. I could manipulate my husband. I could, you know, there are ways that I could use this power that I had. And then after I had children, I was like, it went, you know, like you lose your desire. I did anyway. I had postnatal depression for a while. And then I was like, shit, who am I? Sorry. I was like, who am I without this sexual power? And so I went on this journey of developing myself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and now coming into my own as a sexual being in a very beautiful, wholesome way. I'm divorced the second time, so God help the men that I experienced this with, but I'm reclaiming it for me. I'm reclaiming all aspects of myself for me, and in such a really powerful, meaningful way.
So what was the catalyst for you to change? What happened, and when did it happen that you said, no more, I'm going to be different from I'm going to own my past and be something different? Was there a specific moment, or was it a slow realization?
No, it was my divorce from my first husband, my love of my life, and I was very ill. I was very high on drugs, and I'd really messed up our marriage in a big way, and I needed to get clean and sober, and in order to get clean and sober, I needed to get divorced, and I knew then that if I didn't do something, I was going to die. And I had a little boy who's not so little anymore. He was 5 at the time. And I was like, what kind of mom? Like, I'd become emotionally unavailable to my son, just like my adopted parents were emotionally unavailable to me. So I started to see, but the thing that I really didn't want to become, I'd become. And so, last 15 years, I've clawed my way back, not even back, I've clawed my way into a new way of being that of course I make mistakes, I'm not perfect, and I continue to grow. I continue to learn and stay on the cutting edge and learning curve of life. You know, I'm my great passion is learning. So yeah, and I being a mom to a child in recovery is very different from being an addict. And my daughter, who's 10, going on 30, she's a delight in the sense that I get to parent in a very healthy way. And she shows me stuff. She's like, no, Mom, you got to, like, that aspect of you, no. And my son, you know, he's taught me, he's encouraged me to become the kind of woman that I want him to marry one day, in the sense that how do you treat someone? How do you treat a woman? I know dads teach their boys how to be men, but I think women teach, or mothers teach sons what kind of, how to treat women.
Respect. It's all about respect.
Yeah. So.
Tell me a little bit about your book. What is the title, and why did you write it, and where is it available?
So Sue Nati is a fabulous editor and journalist. She's actually written award-winning books. She's amazing. And she put together an anthology of, I think there are 26 stories in the book called Secrets, where secrets become stories. And it's available at all leading bookshops as far as I know. On my website as well. People can order it there. Sorry, I don't have a copy. It's in one of my boxes. So yes, that book's available. I also offer sensitivity training to corporates. So I go and speak to corporates about sexual harassment and what sensitivity training is. How do we create safety in the workplace? And if there are difficult situations that have been experienced, then I do facilitations and mediations in those processes. So, I mean, my wound has become my healing and has become my gift to the world. So I feel very blessed I know it sounds weird, I feel blessed to have had the experience, because I can go and hold a light for other people to find their healing.
Your message for other women out there for the 16 days of action, what would you say to them?
So don't allow what other people did to you, don't allow yourself to do that to yourself. Don't abandon yourself, don't reject yourself, don't betray yourself. And you deserve to be healed and to live a life of beauty. Those moments or those years that were stolen through abuse don't have to be the whole of your life. Come join us, come have some tea with me, and let's have a chat.
Tell me, what is your website? And we will obviously also put links to all of your social media stuff at the end of the video. But what is your website?
It's www.leigh.joy.co.za.
leighjoy.co.za.
That's right.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for what you're doing for other women out there.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Let me give you a hug.
I'm a girl on fire, I'm not a victim, a girl on fire, I'll stand my ground, girl on fire, I've made a choice, I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire, I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, I'm every woman. I have taken up arms and I choose to defend all that I hold dear. Independent and strong, you will not keep me down, you can't break me. I'm a girl on fire, I'm not a victim, a girl on fire, I'll stand my ground, girl on fire, I've made a choice, I stand proud. Countless hours on the range, I am responsibly armed, I am your equal. I've empowered myself, I have practiced and trained, fear won't control me. With my sisters in arms, we will make ourselves heard, we'll stand together. I'm a girl